I stumbled upon 6 true Craigslist horror stories that reveal my darkest nightmares. I never should have opened that door. The simple click of the handle felt like the beginning of an endless spiral into dread. It was just a room, or so I thought. My heart pounded, echoing in my ears, a frantic rhythm against the hollow silence. I was there, in my small, cramped apartment, just another Tuesday evening scrolling through posts looking for furniture. Just a young adult, navigating through the mundane. But that night was different. The air felt thick, heavy with something unsaid, something lurking just out of sight. The dim light from the lamp danced over the shadows, twisting them into grotesque shapes. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath quickening. A faded picture caught my eye, an antique mirror, tarnished and warped. The caption read, "Free to a good home. Just don't look too close." Chills ran down my spine. Why would someone warn me? My curiosity flared. Who could resist something for free? I tossed caution aside, heart racing with the thrill of discovery. I arranged to pick it up. The next day, my fingers trembled as I pulled up to the seller's address, an aging house that seemed to sigh under the weight of its own memories. The air was colder here, darker. A far cry from my bright apartment. I stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath my feet, each sound echoing in the eerie stillness. The door creaked as I knocked. A shiver raced through me. Moments ticked by until it swung open. An older woman, her face shadowed by her long hair, stood there, eyes too wide, too knowing. She gestured inside, her movements almost hypnotic. The interior was suffocating, dimly lit and filled with the musty scent of decay. I caught glimpses of stacked boxes, dust-coated trinkets, and what looked like a figure. In the mirror that she handed me, I saw not just the reflection of the room, but whispers of lives trapped in the glass. I stammered my thanks, the mirror in my arms feeling heavier than it should have. As I turned to leave, a low hum began, a chilling dirge echoing from nowhere. My heart raced. I needed to escape. My breaths quickened. Back in my apartment, I placed the mirror against a wall, hoping it would fit into my life. But when I glanced into it, a flicker of movement caught my eye, a shadow, shifting, just behind my reflection. My pulse quickened, dread sinking in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Was there something more inside? A cold draft swept through the room, carrying faint whispers that prickled my skin. The shadows grew longer, creeping toward me like fingers reaching out, eager to pull me in. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the silence, rattling my nerves. A door slamming? An unseen presence? Panic surged. I turned, breath hitching in my throat. What was happening? A figure loomed in the darkened corner, and before I could scream, darkness swallowed me whole. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I awoke on the floor, a dull throb radiating from my skull. My heartbeat pulsed in my ears, a rapid drum signaling my return to consciousness. The air around me felt thick, charged with an electric tension that made every hair stand on end. I squinted, trying to push aside the veil of shadows that clung to my vision. The mirror still stood against the wall, but it felt different, somehow more ominous. The air was heavier, saturated with whispers that crept into my mind, weaving threads of dread. I staggered to my feet, heart still racing, and tried to shake off the disorientation. Panic returned as I glanced at the mirror. The reflection showed not just my apartment but a swirling mass of shadows and movement, like a dark fog rolling beneath a surface of glass. It was as if the mirror were a separate world, a portal pulsating with life or death that I approached cautiously, drawn to it but terrified of what I might find. The edges of my vision darkened, threatening to pull me into darkness. I reached out a hand, fingertips brushing the cold surface, and in that moment, the whispers swelled. "I can see you," they seemed to say, layering their words into a monstrous chant. The shadows in the mirror twisted and shifted, forming a figure that looked shockingly familiar, a reflection of myself, yet contorted, with a face that was devoid of emotion and filled with something ancient, something monstrous. That I stumbled back, horrified, as the figure in the mirror raised its hand, mirroring my own movements until it stopped, palm flat against the glass. Suddenly, it grinned an impossibly wide smile that felt like it could peel back the layers of reality itself. With every ounce of strength, I tore my gaze away and stumbled through my apartment, desperate for escape. But the room felt distorted, the corners stretching into shadowed corridors that led nowhere. The walls pulsed, breathing like a living entity, and every object seemed to loom, watching me with silent scrutiny. The whispers twisted, becoming more distinct, more urgent. "Let us in, let us find our way," they called to me, weaving tendrils of terror around my mind. I pressed my palms against my ears, trying to drown them out, but the buzzing only intensified. A cold gust of wind blasted through the room, slamming my bedroom door shut with a resounding thud. I jumped, panic surging anew as I darted toward it, but it wouldn't budge. The handle rattled in my grasp, an unyielding barrier keeping me trapped. From the mirror, a voice emerged, low and resonant. "You shouldn't have taken us." Something thumped against the other side of the door, rattling the frame. I froze, caught between despair and terror. What was behind that door? Was it the darkness that lay in the mirror? Suddenly, the murmurs escalated into frantic screams, the sound tearing through the fabric of my being. "Let us in! Let us in!" In a last-ditch effort, I lunged towards the mirror, the whispers now a cacophony of rage and despair. With a swift motion, I snatched it from the wall, determination coursing through my veins. I wouldn't be consumed. I would confront this horror head-on. As I positioned the mirror in front of myself, the frantic screams grew deafening, morphing into a single dissonation, a deafening roar that felt like a storm crashing against my mind. My reflection flickered, showing not just me, but countless faces writhing in agony behind me, eyes filled with despair reaching out. The energy pulsed, pulling me toward it like a magnet. The familiar figure stepped closer, its grin widening, then with a sharp, crackling sound, the glass shattered. Time froze. Shards erupted, driving into the room, swirling around like terrible little harbingers, and in that moment, I realized with horror that the figure was not merely a reflection, it was the fragmented pieces of something far more sinister, and with the mirror's destruction, it began to seep through. The last thing I saw was its hand reaching out, then everything went black. Just when I thought the nightmare was over, a single set of eyes opened in the darkness, glowing with an unnatural light. It whispered, "Now, you belong to us." I gasped, the vacuous blackness around me collapsing like a suffocating shroud. The eyes pierced through the dark, vivid and predatory, as if they could see every awful secret I had buried deep within my soul. The whispers had morphed into a singular voice, low and echoing, reverberating in my skull with an intensity that threatened to crack my sanity wide open. "Welcome," it said, the words sliding through the air like ice, chilling me from head to toe. "We've been waiting for you." The void throbbed with anticipation, and I struggled to take a step, yet the ground beneath me felt unstable, shifting with each attempt I made. Panic clawed at my throat. I remembered the mirror, its shattered pieces, the way they had fallen like jagged teeth into the abyss. Did I free them, or had I simply invited another form of horror into my life? My pulse thundered in my ears, overshadowing the whispers which now swept past me like wind through a desolate graveyard, carrying hints of long-forgotten sorrows. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, forming shapes that teased my imagination, grotesque figures tinged with memories of regret and despair. Then, a faint glow emerged from the distance, drawing me in with a beckoning warmth that felt impossible in this cold, oppressive dark. I squinted, catching sight of what appeared to be a flickering flame suspended in the air, weaving a pattern of light amidst the shadows. I could see movement figures swaying around it, their forms flickering like dying embers, silent and desperate. As I approached, a sickening realization washed over me. The figures weren't mere shadows but echoes of those who had come before me, lost souls trapped in this nightmare, their faces a kaleidoscope of anguish. They turned their eyes toward mine, longing for release, but that was too terrifying a thought. I shivered at their despair, my breath hitching as I recognized one of them, a familiar face, twisted and etched with torment. "Help us," it pleaded, but its voice sounded like a broken record, droning into a loop of horror. "No!" I screamed, backing away, yet every movement felt futile against the pull of the darkness. Something grazed my skin, cold and slick. I glanced down to find a shadow coiling around my ankle like a serpent. "Accept your fate," the glowing eyes whispered from the void. "Join us. You're one of us now." The realization shook me to my core. I had truly entered another realm, a dimension where time and space warped in on themselves, feeding off despair. My history was absorbed into this place, mixing with the remnants of those who had suffered and died here. Each moment felt like a memory etched in pain, a déjà vu dragged through torment. "Don't fight it," said another fragment of the darkness somewhere nearby. A creature formed. It dipped in and out of solidity, more beast than man, its face contorted into a smile filled with malice. "You can make it stop." The twisted figure lunged at me, and I barely dodged its grasp. It swept past me, colliding with the flickering figures. A chorus of growls erupted, their faces distorting with rage, sending me tumbling backward. I crashed into another shadow, feeling its cold breath on my skin, a malignant brush that froze the blood in my veins. With each passing second, the clawing pangs of terror gripped me tighter as the shadows crept forward, wrapping around my limbs and dragging me toward their dark heart. I fought against the unseen tide, heart racing, desperate to escape their clutches. Just as I felt myself slipping deeper into their grasp, I remembered the words of those who had escaped before me, whispered through desperate prayers. "Find the light," they said. "Follow it home." Frantically, I turned back to the glowing flame, my last beacon of hope. I pushed against the encroaching shadows, screaming against their pull, frantically clawing my way toward it with desperate resolve. As I approached the flame, the figures erupted into frenzied shrieks, the cacophony rising to a fever pitch. "You can't escape. You belong to us." I reached out, fingertips brushing against the warmth of the flame, and in that instant, I felt the energy surge through me, visceral and alive. It was hope, fragile yet fierce, strength thrumming through every fiber of my being. But as I embraced it, the shadow figures surged forth, their howls drowning out reason, demanding, pleading, wanting to drag me back into their eternal despair. "Join us," they screamed. "You will never leave." The flame flickered violently, and I felt it slipping away, the warmth unwinding through my fingers like smoke, as darkness swarmed and enveloped me, clawing at my consciousness, threatening to swallow me whole. Just as the void tightened its grip, I felt an icy hand wrap around my throat, pulling me back, yanking me into the abyss. A piercing, echoing laughter filled the air, growing louder and more triumphant. I gasped as my world shattered yet again, an insatiable void engulfing my existence. "Let the others know," the voice taunted as everything faded into darkness, "the hunt has only just begun." The darkness hung over me like a thick shroud, swallowing the last of the warmth as I felt the ground beneath me dissolve into an otherworldly expanse. My senses fractured, and for a fleeting moment, I floated in a liminal space filled with the lingering echoes of those I had encountered. The laughter still resonated in my ears, taunting and echoing, demanding my submission. I closed my eyes, desperate to shield myself from the sights and sounds, and felt the rewind of time as shadowy figures materialized in the abyss around me, each a torment of their own. I squeezed my eyes tighter, trying to suppress their faces, but their voices crept back under the fragile barrier I had created. "Help us," they groveled, their tones merging into a dissonant chorus of despair that crashed against me like waves of ice. My heart raced, pounding a frantic rhythm in my chest. I opened my eyes, and to my horror, the flickering flame still burned in the distance, its light sharpened by the raucous cries. Mingling dread and desperation propelled me toward the flame once more. It flickered uncertainly, as if aware of the hungry shadows swirling around it. I trudged forward, every step made heavier by the clawing despair of the lost souls, their fingers stretching out, scraping against my skin, yearning for connection and salvation. "Don't let it go," they whispered. "You must not lose it, or you will join us." My breath turned to vapor in the frigid air as the shadows morphed and twisted, horrid specters that jutted out like jagged teeth of a malevolent maw. Each time I made ground, they pushed back twice as fiercely, dragging me into their dismal realm. I stumbled, my eyes wide and panicked, consumed by the darkness creeping closer. And yet, there was a fleeting hope in that flame, shimmering with a promise. I surged towards it, desperate to grasp its safety. With every ounce of will, I maneuvered around clutches of lost souls, whose ethereal forms seemed to shift endlessly, faces flickering from grotesque interpretations of anguish to impossible figures of familiarity. Suddenly, a metallic scent wafted through the air, sickly sweet yet tangibly acidic, and I recoiled, a primal instinct triggering a wave of nausea. The shadows stirred violently, their distorted faces morphing in the ethereal glow of the flame. As I strained forward, I glimpsed something horrifying, a grotesque amalgamation emerging from the darkness, rising as if sculpted from fears untold. Its features were an indistinguishable mess of tortured faces, each one filled with the agony of betrayal, suffering, and unfulfilled craving. "Join us," it crooned, a symphony of wails woven into a single psalm of madness. My heart seized, I could hear the others' voices wrapped in its grymophonic song demanding, desiring me. "No!" I gasped, shoving aside the encroaching shadows. I won't succumb. Fueled by desperation, I shoved my way back toward the flame, my focus sharpened like a blade, and deep within me, a realization lit up like the torch igniting kindling that I could harness the flame, I could pull its heat around me, make it my fortress against the encroaching darkness. "Release your fears!" I screamed, channeling every ounce of emotion into the cry, a manifestation of defiance against my fate. The flame surged unexpectedly, bathing the air in shimmering warmth as I urged it forward. In response, the shadows hesitated, baffled by my newfound conviction. But it was brief. With a roar, they surged forward, snarling and howling, the shadows darkening to an almost solid form that threatened to smother me as they reached out their freezing hands, and then the ground quaked beneath me, the shadows rattled, and the flame erupted into heights I had never imagined, blinding. What followed was agonizing. The ground churned violently as the gaping maw of the darkness yawned wide, and an unfamiliar pressure enveloped me. "No! Not now!" I cried, the spectral faces morphing around me, and just as I gathered my breath to scream one last line of rebellion, the flame imploded into a monstrous explosion of fire. And shadowed in that unfathomable blaze, I felt the familiar icy grip of despair around my ankles, pulling, dragging me back down into the depths. I was torn between the instinct to fight and the alluring call of surrender. "Save yourself!" A voice called from behind me, one that pierced through the chaos and offered a split second of clarity. I turned, and in the flickering shadows, a figure emerged, hazy and indistinct but eerily familiar. "You must choose, stay or go, but hurry." Time seemed to slow as my heart beat in rhythm to the urgency of the moment. The reality of my choices hung heavily in the air, and with the swell of darkness threatening to engulf what little hope remained, I was compelled to reach for the thing that could either pry me from this nightmare or shackle me forever. "Choose!" the voice implored again. I steeled my resolve, grasping at the shadow's ethereal haze spiraling around me, and as I dug deeper into the flickering disparities of reality, I felt the light and dark clash within me. But then I looked back to the flame that was now a mere flicker in the distance, and I saw the figure stretch one thin arm toward me, and my breath hitched with the chilling words that dripped from its lips like venom. "Let the horror begin." In that instant, they vanished, leaving only darkness in their wake as I felt everything collapse around me like a shattered mirror, fragments of potential futures scattering in the winds of the abyss, and then silence. The silence lingered like a coiled serpent, tight and electric, buzzing against my skin as the darkness folded in on itself. I could feel the humidity return, clinging to my body like a shroud. It was an indelicate embrace, and just as I began to steady my breath, the air shifted, becoming pregnant with pregnant dread, a foreboding omen coiling in the pit of my stomach. With painstaking care, I reached out, my fingers ghosting through the obscurity, longing to anchor myself in some form of reality still lingering in this nightmarish realm. The nothingness seemed alive, breathing around me, pressing against my ribcage, tightening with each pulse of my own fear. Shadows trembled, coiling in on themselves like dark smoke, curving into serpentine shapes that whispered secrets I was too terrified to hear. "Help us!" the echoes began again, more insistent, intertwining with the crackle of static in the air. I backed up against something cold and unforgiving, a wall, or perhaps, the remnants of the explosion's fury. My heart thundered in my chest, and as I pressed against the surface, I could feel the icy tendrils of despair brush over my skin like the ghost of a long-dead lover. "Change is coming," they sang, their voices a maddening chorus that intertwined with my racing thoughts. Secrets can be unburdened, misery released. The shadows slithered closer, eyes forming in the depths of the void, fixated on mine, their gaze hungry, probing, questioning. "Not now," I whispered, squeezing my eyes shut. If I couldn't see them, maybe they couldn't see me. But like a sickness, the whispers grew, infecting the very fabric of this shadowland. "Open your eyes. You must see," they urged, their fervor rising to a cacophony like 1,000 whispers of madness wrestling for dominance. "Trust the darkness. Embrace it. It will set you free." A jolt coursed through me, followed by a rising panic clawing up my throat. I shook my head violently. I was not ready to succumb to the shadows again. I opened my eyes, fighting against the urge to retreat deeper into the folds of the encroaching night. What I saw chilled me to my core, a dismal landscape stretching endlessly, devoid of color and life, littered with fragments of past souls who had ventured too close to the abyss. Broken pleas etched in an emptiness I couldn't bear to comprehend. Their faces twisted into horrifying masks of despair, stretching into grotesque smiles etched permanently into this eternal chaos. More shadows began to creep forward, coiling around my ankles, locking me in place. "You're one of us now," they hissed, each syllable reminiscent of crystal shattering on concrete. In their fervent gaze, I glimpsed fragments of my own hopes, flickering in and out like starlight swallowed by the growing shadow, a painful reminder of who I once was. Suddenly, a thunderous sound tore through the night, a roar that shattered the fragile veil of silence. The ground beneath me surged violently, and I stumbled, barely catching my balance. Was this the moment the very earth would open and swallow me whole? No, something else emerged, a creeping sensation of dread slithering through my veins. Tremors of an unholy presence caressed my spine, igniting an instinct to look beyond. Out of the spectral void, a figure emerged, tall, cylindrical, and brimming with shadows. It was not human, its form unfurled as if crafted from the very darkness that sought me. A silhouette woven from the fragments of every soul that had slipped into the abyss, swirling in a ghastly ballet, taunting, beckoning. "Come forth," it beckoned, each word resonating in the marrow of my bones, mingling allure with repulsion. "Embrace the truth or choose extinction. The choice is yours, but know this." I felt pulses of raw energy radiate from its form, an intoxicating blend of dread and curiosity. "Choose, and you shall know the depths of despair. And oh, how sweet it is to unravel the threads of existence." An overwhelming unease surged within me as its features sharpened, a multitude of eyes blaring with ancient knowledge, each gazing into the deepest recesses of my soul. I felt the committee of shadows tighten, their whispers crescendoed until they coalesced into a single, horrific realization that I was not merely suspended in that infernal space. I was their embodiment, a vessel for unraveling the terrible truths hidden in my own history, the terrible choices that led me into the embrace of the night. "Please, no." The words escaped before I could swallow them back. The figure's smirk widened, a chasm of teeth glistening with the echoes of betrayal. "Then choose, dear one. Embrace the darkness or allow it to consume you, to smear your essence across an ancient tapestry of despair." The shadows erupted into fits of manic laughter, reverberating around me as I felt my mind waver under the pressure of unraveling secrets. I shut my eyes again, but their laughter only grew louder, a thunderstorm battering against my resolve. The very walls of reality were crumbling, and I was trapped amid the chaos, a puppet teetering on the brink of a fraying string. Instinctively, I pressed my palm against the cold surface behind me and felt something pulse beneath, a heartbeat that mirrored my own. No, it was not just a wall, it was an omen, recalling a moment long buried in the depths of my memory. A choice long ago torn from my grasp, a crime hushed by guilt and silence. What have you done? The darkness burbled, mocking the whisper of my past. It was a nightmarish loop beginning to unravel, every stitch boycotting the fabric of my sanity. A crack formed beneath my feet, coursing with venomous energy that throbbed like a heartbeat, a broken promise, a decision long forgotten. And just as I finally turned to confront the malevolent figure, the earth trembled, a darkness roared around me, spiraling out like a distant galaxy coming apart at the seams. Fear surged, the realization dawned on me this was not merely a place of suffering. This was a battlefield of secrets, and I was poised at its very heart, ready to be consumed, whispered away eternally. Now choose, before it's too late, the figure hissed, its eyes boring into mine, piercing through the spectral fog. Just as the light began to fracture above me, the ground splitting open beneath my feet, time slowed, and I could feel the darkness beneath, the pulse of fate calling me toward oblivion. But then I saw a flicker of light appear in the chasm. Was it hope or another deception? And just before I could grasp the truth, the ground cracked wide open, ready to swallow me whole, yanking me into a void of unending terrors. Choose wisely. It echoed in a chilling harmony, drowning out my horrifying realizations as I spilled over the edge, plunging into the abyss below. As I fell into the inky depths, the darkness became more tangible, wrapping around me like a vice. I sensed the weight of the abyss pressing in, urging every ounce of air from my lungs until I felt like a mere wisp of breath, drifting through a violent twilight. My mind swirled with haunting echoes of the shadows, repeating their horrid promises, yet, nestled somewhere deep among the chaos, I grasped a flicker of resistance, but the ethereal glow above, was it a trick or a beacon? My instincts screamed for awareness, yet all around me, shadows ascended to claim their prize, swirling maliciously as they encased me in their velvety embrace. I strained against their grasp, but the deeper I plunged, the tighter their clutches grew. Suddenly, the freefall ceased, the ground beneath broke only to become a starlit expanse, so unlike the void I had anticipated. I landed softly, suspended on something warm, a pool of ghostly light, shimmering gently like liquid silver. It throbbed with the beat of a forgotten heart, relentless like my own, yet devoid of the dread within the depths. Before I could gather my breath, my surroundings pulsated with an unnatural rhythm, and the air thickened. Wisps of fog curled around me, whispering incoherently in effervescent tones. I slowly turned, realizing I was no longer alone. Figures emerged from the mist, grotesqueries of every kind, their limbs twisted and their once judicial faces contorted in eternal anguish. "Welcome back," they crooned, voices layered like a haunting melody gone awry. I recognized the names. They belonged to those I had betrayed long ago, the very souls I had tried to bury in silence. Each face parroted my past decisions, amplifying my shame until it morphed into seething dread. With each step they took toward me, I could feel something within begin to mourn. Did they crave vengeance, or were they here to haunt the remnants of me? I recoiled, but the warmth underfoot flared, revealing the contours of this ethereal tableau, their hollow eyes bearing witness to the choices I wished to forget. Suddenly, a blanket of darkness surged forward, swallowing the starlight whole. I was enveloped once more, a chaotic flailing landscape stretching beneath my feet. The ghosts pressed closer, singing a lament for the secrets I could not conjure, their voices woven tightly with my own despair. Then I understood a choice needed to be made. No! I shrieked, wrapping my arms around my head, trying to shield myself from their haunting faces, torn victims whose identities dissolved into the ether, phantoms etched into my very bones. The crescendo of their voices rose, melding into a horrific choral plea aimed at my crumbling spirit: reveal or be revealed. A shriek erupted from my throat as a sharp pain pulsed through my head like a hammer striking an anvil. I staggered forward, impacting something solid, another slithering presence lurking in the edges of my vision. The air crackled with a palpable tension, an ancient ghost of anger infused with a dark power channeling through the malevolent figure before me. It hovered just beyond my periphery, feeding off my anguish, my failure, a parasite of incomprehensible malice. "Here lies your truth," it roared, an inhuman chorus erupting from its depths as I felt fragments of my forgotten memories crackling at the surface. Each beat thudded like a drum, resurrecting flashes of betrayal, of losses gnawing at my psyche, the choices I had forfeited, the collateral damage scattered reverberations throughout this shadow's cape. The figure extended its hands, a gruesome invitation to inspect the tapestries of my past. The gaping void became a mirror, warping into reflections of my own regret, my failures becoming a looming specter of visceral dread, compelling me to confront the darkness of my existence. But then I caught sight of her, a face among the swirling maelstrom of torment. A familiar face I had sacrificed for my own freedom. No longer solid or fully formed, she flickered in and out of the dark ether, her eyes wide with accusation and sorrow. "You did this." She intertwined into the shadows, her voice wrapping around me like a chokehold. I could nearly taste the bitterness of betrayal lingering on her words. All at once, rage bloomed inside me, fanning the flames of forgotten pride, bending the bending and breaking of reality. "Finish it, choose it. The abyss only grows deeper." "No!" I roared back, stepping forward, ready to fight against the nightmare that held me hostage, imprisoned within a cage of my creation. I felt the world shift, crackling energy surging through the very fibers of this spectral space as I battled against the shadows that sought to ensnare me. Faces twisted and contorted as the dark figure loomed closer, an all-consuming embodiment of my misdeeds, but no sooner had I begun to grapple against the rolling tide of despair than the ground lurched beneath me, sending splintering shards of memories crashing and swirling into oblivion. Black tendrils rose up, wrapping around my throat, choking back the truth born of fear. I was trapped in a maelstrom, surrounded on all sides, caught between light and dark as my heart pounded in an incessant rhythm. "Choose now, or we shall choose for you," the voices echoed, a blend of sorrow and menace ready to consume my essence as the darkness sought its final victory. The very fabric of existence began to tremble, and I was spiraling down, helplessly caught in the storm of fate as my vision began to dim, and just as I realized the ground beneath began to split again, the abyss yawning wide, gaping with hungry flame, and the warmth of the spectral light flickered out completely. In the final moments of terror, I was left with a singular choice that loomed over me like an unwelcome specter. Would I surrender to the darkness, or would I dare rise above it all, risking everything to claim back what the shadows demanded? Suddenly, a chilling thought threaded through my mind: perhaps the darkness would never let me go. Before I could grasp my fate, the abyss collapsed entirely, and I fell into the void, the last remnants of my will dissolving into nothingness. "Welcome to the final choice," echoed through the silence, the shadows tinged with laughter that merged with the terrible obscurity. Unwrapping before me an eternity of torment was all that lingered. The atmosphere shifted with a surreal heaviness as I tumbled deeper into the abyss, the haunting remnants of my decisions swirling like debris in a broken whirlpool. Each scream of the past echoed louder, drowning out any thoughts of resolve. I fell for what felt like timeless, weightless eternity, my body suspended between falling and floating. Perception warped as shadows folded into themselves, whispering dark secrets that snagged at my sanity, cascading like ghostly ribbons pulled by unseen hands. Then, abruptly, I landed not softly, but with an impact that jolted through my bones. I found myself sprawled upon a cracked and uneven surface, slick and glistening as if drenched in unholy water. The air was dense and brimming with a putrid odor, rising from the black, soupy ground beneath me. It was in this grotesque landscape that I managed to pull myself upright, a sense of horror seeping into my very core as I beheld the grotesqueries that emerged around me. A twisted forest of gnarled trees protruded from the ground, contorted figures woven into their bark, a macabre tapestry of sufferings that stretched as far as my eye could see. Each tree shimmered with a sickly glow, pulsating with life yet devoid of any semblance of real vitality. I advanced cautiously along the treacherous terrain, heart racing in time with my encroaching dread. Shadows flitted between trees, whispering my name in hissing breaths that seemed to slip through the cracks of reality. They taunted, twisted remnants of my past, reminders of dark corners I hoped to leave behind but tethered here, forever linked to the shadows that refused to release me. Suddenly, a chilling scream shattered the pervasive silence, a sound so pure and raw it froze me in place. The echoes bounced off the twisted trunks of my tormentors, settling into an eerie stillness as the murmurings grew hushed. Before long, I found myself drawn toward the source of that anguished cry, an inexplicable compulsion guiding my steps. Emerging through a thick curtain of mist, I arrived at a clearing filled with crimson flowers, their petals glistening like blood. Within this unsettling sanctuary lay what appeared to be a warped arrangement of figures hunched and shaking. They shuddered rhythmically, as though possessed, surrounded by a sickly, swirling fog that curled through their malformed frames. As I drew closer, their faces solidified into single-minded horror, eyes wide and empty, mirroring my own spiraling despair. Their mouths moved in synchronization, crafting words that resonated deep within the marrow of my being. Join us, a choice awaits. Breathe life into the shadows or let the shadows consume you. I recoiled, repulsed by their invitation to surrender, yet something stirred within, a flicker of longing to belong, to become part of something, even if steeped in darkness. A part of me ignited at the thought, what if, perhaps, I could harness this chaos? The figures began to shift, pulling away the veil of fog, unveiling their offerings. What twisted promises of power did they hold in the night? Their fingers elongated, reaching toward me, slender, grotesque tendrils shimmering with an allure that beckoned me closer. I felt a swell of emotions collide, the urge to fight, to run, and to delve deeper into the dark web of my existence. Choose. They screamed, their voices knitting together in an unholy chant that rattled my nerves, sending tremors through the very air. We have waited. The beings of the past linger upon the marrow of your bones, we will never let go. Cacophony erupted as the very fabric of reality began to warp and tremble, shadows urging me forward, coaxing deeper contemplation. The pain of all I had lost coursed through me, ripping at my insides, while I gazed at those tortured souls forever locked in their damned cycle. The choice laid bare. Paths splintered in every direction, weaving rich tales of joy laced with despair. That haunting scream returned, echoing in my mind, entwined with another desire, the memory of her, the one who once awakened something pure within me, now lost to the shadows. Was this where she lingered? Could I reclaim what I had cast away, or was I merely a would-be prisoner in a tale woven from despair? As I grasped the fabric of my thoughts, a decision died on my tongue, swallowed whole by the insatiable dread encircling me. Just then, I was pulled back, an unseen hand clamped down on my wrist, dragging me toward the heart of the circle. The figures hissed with anticipation, eyes glimmering with wicked desire, their offers entwined with poison. Make your choice. They shrieked, the echo of betrayal at my back, the pull of lost love ahead, the shadows threatening to envelop me whole. I hesitated in fear, poised on the precipice of ultimate oblivion, when from the corner of my eye, I spotted her more than a shadow, a lingering essence flickering amid the twisted boughs. I could feel her longing, her pain, and somewhere buried beneath all the darkness, a thread of light, clarity surged within, cutting through the cacophony that ensnared me. But before I could grasp the final strands of liberation, the ground trembled violently, splitting wider than before. I was caught between two worlds, the embrace of the lost souls behind me and the flickering hope ahead, and just as I took a breath to leap toward her, the ground beneath me shattered, and I plummeted into the unknown. I plunged into nothingness, swallowed by a chasm that roared with haunting echoes of souls crying out in torment. As I fell, my body twisted violently in the dark, colliding with unseen obstacles that stung like the jagged edges of broken dreams. Time felt elastic, stretching beyond comprehension, until I landed with a bone-crunching thud in a disorienting pit that absorbed my scream, converting it into a muffled moan. Dazed and disheveled, I pulled myself upright yet again, the oppressive stench of wet earth and decay clawing at my throat. In the dim light, I saw around me a labyrinth of fetid tunnels, rough walls glistening with moisture and despair. Pulsing tendrils of darkness grazed my skin, wrapping around my ankles like snakes, and I fought to free myself from their caress that I stumbled further into the shadows, every footfall echoing with the weight of anticipation, the kind that leaves a bitter taste in one's mouth. The oppressive darkness clung to me, and soon, whispers began to rise from the cracks in the stone. They were no longer merely vague strains of voices, they had become distinct, shaping into snippets of conversation that tore at the fraying fabric of my mind. "Did you hear her?" A voice rasped through my thoughts. "She has found her way again." Another hissed, "Foolish child. She will bring only ruin." My pulse quickened, and I pressed onward, heedless of their warnings. A flickering light pulsed in the distance, drawing me like a moth to a dangerously captivating flame. As I neared, I saw shapes entwined in the flicker, grotesque and distorted yet undeniably familiar. The shadows contorted into spectral forms my past played out before me. Faces emerged familiar yet horrifying, refracted by terror: Maria, my first love with her sad, shimmering eyes, old friends twisted in smiles that never reached their heads, trapped in eternal laughter that mocked reality. They flitted around like specters caught in an intricate ballet, gliding to the rhythmic pulse of unknown forces surging through the walls. "Join us!" they echoed, their voices woven together into a haunting melody that tantalized and terrified. Yet, rather than comfort, it filled me with icy dread, the barest hints of their desperation clawing at the edges of my fragile hope. And then, from the depths of the pulse, a new figure began to emerge, an imposing shadow that loomed beyond the flickering light, a face encased in darkness as the air around it rippled with malice. "Seeker," it whispered, a voice wrapping around me like tendrils through the dark. "You wish to reunite with those who were lost to you. But what price are you willing to pay?" Fear gripped my throat like a vice, choking my breath into shallow gasps. The entity moved closer, its form bending with the flicker, revealing a gnarl of twisted features no longer human, swollen with something ancient that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. The stench of death clung to it, memories of loss and regret spiraling in tandem. "I can show you the way," it coaxed, talons glimmering as if draped in shadows, ready to ensnare my very essence. "Breathe deeply of the void. You may reclaim what was once yours, or you may seek perfection among the damned." My heart raced as I recoiled instinctively. Delicious fear mixed with the exhilaration of possibility filled the air. It tempted me with choices I had thought extinct, yet who knew what awaited on the other side of daring delusions? Would I have to sacrifice more to reclaim the echoes of the lives I once cherished? Suddenly, the labyrinth trembled again, more violently this time, the walls pulsing like a heart that yearned to escape its prison. In the chaos, tendrils of darkness lashed out, slashing at me from all directions. I stumbled back against the rough stone, and gasped, realizing the walls were alive as if they breathed in unison with the entity beckoning me forward. "Embrace the shadows. Embrace the pain." It howled, a cacophony of voices joining the fray. As the brightness flickered more violently, I caught a glimpse of Maria within the swirling chaos, her expression twisted into one of agony, caught between a world that had forsaken her and the void that promised undying despair. "Help me!" she cried, a sound that shattered the encroaching darkness. "Don't let it take you. You must fight." With desperation ignited in my chest, my thoughts scrambled to weave the fabric of courage amidst the overwhelming dread. I knew that if I reached for the light, I risked everything I had left, my very soul tethered precariously in a world that relished suffering. "Make your choice." The entity screeched, its wrath pent up as the light flickered one last time, revealing that the ground beneath us began to tremble more fearfully than before, that I felt the tug of the abyss threatening to swallow me whole as I faced the agonizingly familiar shadows, my adored lost love screaming my name amidst their feigned promise. The world around me began to dissolve, my heart pounded like a war drum, and my breath, caught in my throat, struggled to escape. And just as the shadows lunged for me, the light flickered brighter, a blinding flash that enveloped the darkness surrounding me. I could either plunge into that blinding radiance or drown in the malevolence that sought to stake its claim over me. The choice loomed a heartbeat away. then, silence. As the silence suffocated me, the blinding flash snapped my reality like a brittle thread. The flickering light swallowed my vision, merging with the encroaching shadows until they blended into an unsettling haze that warped my surroundings. I felt weightless, suspended in an expanse where time unraveled and nothing felt truly solid. From within this void, a cold laughter echoed through my mind, reverberating with familiar malevolence. Flickers of memories assaulted me deep, unsettling moments from my life when despair had wedged itself between hope and reality. The laughter twisted into screams of my lost companions, now mingling with the wild rhythm of my own heart, threatening to tear me apart. Suddenly, I fell through a layer of thick, gelatinous air and crashed onto solid ground, landing with a jarring impact. I blinked against the sudden shift, gasping as I struggled to comprehend the grotesque surroundings. Dimly lit by flickering neon signs, I discovered a dilapidated urban landscape, a twisted reflection of the world above a nightmarish maze of crumbling buildings, many adorned with graffiti that pulsed like a breathing organism. Everything felt eerily familiar yet irrevocably wrong. As I regained my footing, I hesitated, looking back to see the darkness dissipate, revealing the twisted figures of Maria and my friend standing in a frozen tableau behind me, their expressions contorted in a cacophony of despair and longing. "Help us!" they pleaded in unison, their voices a haunting chorus. At that moment, the ground trembled again, an ominous vibration that swept over the landscape as if heralding an approaching storm. But not of rain, this was a tempest of fear, the air thick with a prickling tension full of unnameable dread. I started forward, driven by instinct more than rational thought. Each step pulsated with the urgency to escape but also an undeniable gravity drawing me back toward the incessant wails of my companions. The buildings twisted around me, shifting, reshaping to block my path. I could not tell if I was walking forward or deeper into a labyrinthine trap set by unseen hands. Then, as if in answer to my growing uncertainty, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman wrapped in a cloak of darkness, her face obscured but her eyes gleamed with dreadfully familiar intensity. She stepped closer, and as she did, a dissonant melody began to surround me, a music that resonated with sorrow and loss. "Seekers of the forgotten," she sung softly, her voice laced with an edged beauty. "You tread on paths not meant for the living. You may hear pleas and echoes, but not all that is lost wishes to be found." Her gaze settled on mine, and beneath the veil of her presence, a cascade of memories flooded my mind, moments of laughter twisted into melancholy, shadowed corners of my soul long buried, but before I could react, shadows coalesced behind her, distinct forms rising with the desperation of the damned. Flashes of my own past now became horrid caricatures, baring their teeth in grotesque grins, eyes wide with a haunting hunger. "Choose us!" cried one, a shape that once harbored such promise, now transformed into a being of darkness. "Join us in eternal yearning." I stepped back, heart racing as dread unfurled within me, suffocating my thoughts. I just want to go home," I stammered, desperately scanning the landscape for an exit, for any hope of escape. "Home?" the cloaked figure echoed, tilting her head as if the word itself held infinite weight. "There is no home for those who have severed the ties of life. Home is where your fears lurk, waiting for the shadows to reclaim those they have lost." The shadows behind her began to thrash, swirling like a storm of anger and grief. And then she reached out a hand towards me, her mouth curling into an insidious smile. "But you have a choice, seeker. Embrace what you have lost, the darkness within you, or fight against a fate that has already been woven into the fabric of time." Abruptly, the walls of the maze shimmered, revealing flashes of scenes from a life well lived, yet tinged with sorrow and regret, moments of laughter that I could barely remember, straining against the pull of the darkness as the fabric of reality threatened to tear apart. Just then, the ground beneath me started to shift violently. The moans of countless souls echoed around me, resonating not from the living but from those eternally caught within the depths of despair. I felt a tremor, not just in the earth but in my very being, as dread bubbled inside me, swelling like a tide ready to crash. I locked eyes with the cloaked figure, my heart pounding erratically as her smile widened, revealing rows of sharpened teeth. The shadows surged forward, gripping at my limbs, tugging me towards that abyssal darkness I feared the most. And in that harrowing moment, the cacophony of wails crescendoed, breaking into a fever pitch as the barrier between myself and the depths thinned, threatening to swallow me whole, and I found myself screaming as my sanity began to fracture under the weight of despair. But as the shadows enveloped me, a thought pierced through the terror. Perhaps embracing the darkness was the only way to combat it and reclaim what had been lost. And just as I struggled to gather the remaining threads of my will, the ground beneath me shattered, plunging me into an impossible void that whispered promises of torment and darkest truths. What awaited me in the depths of that gaping maw? I had yet to find out. As I plummeted deeper into the void, the swirling shadows clawed at me, tearing at the very essence of who I was. Thoughts rushed through my mind like a torrent, each reliving the painful memories I had sought to escape. The faces of those I had wronged tormented me from the depths of my conscience. They circled around me, a storm of specters, their faces contorted with anguish. I had brought this upon myself. Suddenly, I felt an abrupt halt. A crushing force pulled me into an abyss, where time and space bent unnaturally. I was thrown onto a cold, hard ground, surrounded by flickers of light that danced like will-o'-the-wisps. As I forced my eyes open, the grotesque scenery revealed itself, a dimly lit landscape reminiscent of my old neighborhood, yet twisted beyond recognition. The air crackled with electricity, intertwining shadows swirling like angry storm clouds. Trauma pressed heavily against my heart. Was this some sort of purgatory? I gasped, my breath hitching in the frigid air, restored memories melding with nightmarish visions that shook my resolve. "You cannot run from us, Seeker," murmured a voice, one that permeated my thoughts, curling around them like smoke. The shadows thickened, sharpening into solid forms that bore the faces of those I had lost, and now, they were all together in this twisted fragment of existence. Maria's anguished face broke through the swarm, eyes wide with desperation. "Help us," she wailed, "you promised." Tears streamed down my face as guilt surged back, clawing at my heart. Each face echoed her plea, their suffering palpable. But what was I really able to do? My instincts screamed for self-preservation, to flee from the palpable guilt, yet their cries wound around me like chains. "Embrace it," the shadows urged, melding into one collective torment. "Turn against the light, join your lost with the darkness." My mind reeled. What did it mean? As I struggled to comprehend their haunting proclamations, I felt a pulse resonating beneath my feet. The ground throbbed with an ancient rhythm, whispering secrets not meant for my ears. Out of the darkness rose the cloaked figure once more, its grin wide and malevolent, each serrated tooth gleaming in sinister delight. "You've fought valiantly, but your soul is ripe for harvest. You've invited them in. Their pain is yours now." With every word, my heart sank deeper into despair. I had unwittingly welcomed their anguish into my very core. Their tortured souls were now woven into the tapestry of my being. "No! I can't!" I screamed, yet the shadows closed in tighter, pulling me toward the looming chasm. "You've already chosen," it hissed, "the flame of your essence flickers in the dark. We will consume all you cherish." Caught in the roaring fury of their combined agony, I felt my conviction splintering. Yet, amidst the chaos, a single thought emerged like a vestige of light: I had the power to forge a path through this wretched nightmare. I had not simply succumbed, I had the strength to shape my own destiny, even within this desolate realm. Then, as if fueled by newfound courage, I summoned every ounce of my will, forcing a soundless scream, a desperate plea to break the cycle. "No! I will not allow you to take me." As those words crystallized, the pervasive shadows momentarily recoiled, releasing their grip. Stunned by my defiance, I stumbled back and turned away from their accusing gazes, seeking the flickering light pulsing faintly at the fringes of despair. I sprinted toward it, darkness snapping at my heels, howling in rage as I reached for the illumination, an invitation to something greater than myself. "Turn back!" they screeched, but my heart thundered with defiance. Each step forward felt monumental, the shadows swirling hungrily, their insatiable cries growing fainter until they reverberated into silence behind me. The warm light surrounded me, washing over my trembling form, illuminating hidden truths I had once feared to confront. And then I saw her again, Maria, her form shimmering against the light. "You fought for us," she whispered in an ethereal tone. "Don't fear the past, embrace it, and you will be free." Her words echoed within me, and I felt something shift. Her hand extended once more, meeting mine with warmth, before dissolving into luminous threads that entwined around my body. I felt the presence of the others, their essence joining the light as they beckoned to be part of my story. In that instant, the shadowy figures became less threatening, their faces full of longing rather than torment, seeking a voice through my own. It dawned upon me that it was not the darkness I needed to battle, it was understanding. I had to allow their stories to be told through my own, to resonate in harmony with the light and acknowledgement of their pain rather than an eternal silence. But then the ground below trembled violently. The spectral realm lurched, the shadow shapes distorting as walls of darkness creaked under the weight of a new truth. "You cannot escape the void." The figure screamed, its shrieks warped into a howling tempest. The shadows surged forward, ravenous in one last attempt to claim me. A blinding dawn erupted from the horizon, an awakening of clarity, surging through the relentless darkness that tightened around me. I was surrounded, but I was ready. I was no longer just a vessel, I became a bridge, an embodiment of the collective will unleashed. With a powerful scream, I pierced through the thick layers of despair, anchoring into the bright heart that beat within me. The light exploded around me, an embodiment of hope that shattered the encroaching darkness. I surged forward, the essence of every lost soul igniting within as they joined my defiance, filling the hollowness with strength and resolution, but as the darkness writhing desperately shrieked, "You cannot have them." In that moment, I understood, this was only the beginning. Though I had broken free, the abyss would never fully release its hold. It would forever linger at the edges of my consciousness, whispering its promises of despair, waiting for my moment of weakness. As the light began to expand, enveloping the last vestiges of shadow, I finally broke free from the abyss, hurling myself into existence once more, but lingering was the unsettling truth. The horror could never truly die as long as its echoes lived within me. And even as I stepped into the light, I knew beneath this veneer of hope, the darkness still stirred, biding its time, whispering, "You can never escape the nature of shadows, we are part of you now."